question number one, how have you learned? This is just sort of in your life. You guys are going to share your experience amongst yourself. I'll get taken out and you guys will be on your own. How have you learned to accept your trial and error nature in a way that would appreciate this wealth of experiential wisdom that you end up possessing over time? So how have you learned to accept and or experience your trial and error nature?
This is why like human design just trips me out so much, because before I ever started learning about any of this, like, I mean, I'm 37 now, so it's probably like in my late 20s, I started to realize, I was just like, I think my life philosophy is just to try and have as many experiences as possible. And there's no right or wrong. And it's all just like adding wisdom and just like giving me, just more interesting stories to tell at the end of life, or just, whatever. Like it's like putting me in the path of more opportunities. And so I didn't even realize that that was like a 3-5 characteristic until literally right now. When he dropped in that question, because I'm into human design, but I'm not that deep into it. So I just think that's, again, it's just wild how accurate this is. And yeah, it's just, I've sort of embraced it as my philosophy. Yeah.
That's a huge thing. Oh, sorry, please.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I kind of lost my thought there. This is what happens with open heads, so please go ahead. I'm serious. I forgot what I was going to say.
No, I was just going, to really say that it's all about your perspective and experience and wisdom and age. As you get older, you become more wiser. And for me, what hit the nail on the head, because I found human design about 2.5 years ago, but I started to really piece the things together in my life, and that there is no such, to me, it's like, I'll call them blessings in disguise. Long story short is that I've always loved graphics design, and I got a degree in graphics design. I thought I would have my own business, be my own freelancer. Well, graduating college about 20 some years ago, the market became oversaturated and I couldn't find a job. So I was bound and determined to, get a job that was going to pay the bills, right? So I decided, well, the most logical thing is joining and learning about computers, right? Because that's the way of the world. It was the newest technology in the future, right? So I literally, worked a full-time job, and then I went to school every single night. I worked a job on the weekends just to make ends meet, and earned some Microsoft certifications and landed a job in IT. Well, I built my IT career from the ground up. And despite everything career assessment that you could possibly imagine told me the worst possible area I could get into was IT, based upon my skill sets and my background. But what it really taught me was 3 very, very valuable lessons. Getting into IT and leaving the world of graphics design is I am not a graphics designer. Despite the fact that I love everything about it, it helped me understand that I'm actually that creative director, if you will, in the graphics design world. And my strengths are in leadership. And it also taught me that I was just this natural born leader, right? And I also learned from that basically, the power of decision making, because for me, I literally, I'll say one day I learned, got a basic job as a help desk technician. And one day, long story short, my manager said, okay, staffing changes, this is being outsourced. You need to train these people. And what do you want to do for a career? Oh, by the way, you're the new IT systems administrator, which meant that I had to support core infrastructure for a company where if it went down, it was going to lose thousands of dollars. And I literally had almost zero credibility. Okay, so you're talking a graphics designer needs to become an IT systems administrator and have a 4-year computer science degree. I didn't know the first thing about it, but what it also taught me is my and determination, and the fact that when you decide something, there is no other option. So I decided there was no applying for other jobs. There's internally, externally. And for me, you could say it was a huge mistake, but it taught me so many valuable lessons. So human design really opened my eyes through that whole idea of trial and error. You're gonna fail, you're gonna go down the wrong path, but to me, they're just like, these hiccups in your life become kind of road signs of like, oh, well, maybe I was supposed to turn left instead of turn right. And it helps you kind of navigate and learn the lessons that you need to learn and make you stronger to prepare you for the next level, because it's always going to be constant change in life, right? And you have to go with the ups and downs. You don't see people here like constantly laughing, right? We'll laugh about a funny joke, but after about the third or fourth time, it's not funny anymore. So that's really, to me, what it's about. Sorry, long-winded answer.
I was going to say just quickly, so my experience actually with 3-5 and with trial and error has been actually really challenging until I would say recently, over the last 4 years. And the reason it was really challenging for me is because of my own social conditioning. And I went to a very prestigious college in the United States. I was around a lot of really smart people. And, when there's really smart people there, there's also a lot of perfectionism in there. And you want to you want to be perfect as well. And I started to kind of blend into that a little bit. And so, and a lot of things that happened growing up, and, my parents not really knowing how to parent a manifestor, I think, was a part of it. But I think, for me, most of my life, trial and error was really difficult. And what has really been supportive for me to work with my design and the trial and error and embracing it is really just understanding that, the trial and error is going to happen. The mistakes are going to happen, but it's really not, it's about not personalizing it, right? I think what I used to do in the past is any mistake that I made or any kind of error that happened, and I made a lot of mistakes, I would subconsciously personalize it as if it meant something about me as a person. And I really have had to create a more of an objective perspective around trial and error and making mistakes, especially as an entrepreneur, right, in business, for sure. And that has been really, really helpful for me. But so I think it's really about making sure you're not personalizing it, right? It's really understanding that. And
absolutely.
It's interesting. All of my clients are always talking to me about failure all the time. I'm having conversations around failure all the time. And it's just something that I realized people are always wanting to talk to me about. And so I just think it's really, I just made that connection actually right now, this moment. So, but I did want to share that, for me, my experience hasn't been always embracing trial and error and mistakes.
I think it's really interesting because I feel like I, as you spoke, saw the difference in the 3-5, but the generator versus the manifestor, because I definitely took it personally as well. And I was a perfectionist. I related to all that. A perfectionist, conditioned to feel like you can't make mistakes, all of that. But instead of seeing whatever failure as a failure, it's I didn't see it that way. So I needed everyone else not to see it that way. No, it's not a mistake. I learned from it, but I can't have you see it as a mistake either. And so it's I personalized it, but I projected the personalization instead of internalizing it. And then kind of going back to something that Cheyenne said earlier, I completely relate to, since I was a little kid, I always used to say that, who I want to be when I grow up is the type of, when I'm old and a grandma, I just want to have a story for everything. If anyone's bringing something up, I have an experience about that. And so I definitely led my life in that way. And as I grew up, I realized the only way you can have so many experiences is to fail through them and to learn from them. And so I think I'm a very big turn your L's into lessons kind of person, but it's there was a time in my life where I needed everyone around me to also believe that. Whereas I think as I've become more aware of how I work, I've also become more okay with that's how I work. That doesn't need to be how other people perceive it.
Very beautiful. Thank you.
For me, with mistakes, we talk about how we beat ourselves up when we make mistakes. That's the conditioning we're brought up in, for the most part. It's really a surrendering of having expectations a lot of the time for me. I mean, I'm a reflector. I'm here to live in the present moment as much as I possibly can. The more I'm in the future, attaching to outcomes on things, disappointment central just waiting for me ahead, if that makes sense to you guys. So, you know, it's really surrender is what it is. It's just going in, like you ladies have been saying, going into the experience for the experience and having a good time, you know, with it. And that's kind of the 3-5 vibe to me. But dealing with that conditioning early on, I think a lot of threes, when we first come into this, we beat ourselves up so much and we were down on ourselves our whole lives for making mistakes and not getting it right, or not doing as well as Bobby or Sally or whoever the case may be. But, you know, you guys are all awesome 3-5s. I can see it on you. It's awesome to be in the space with you guys.
Agreed.
You're awesome too.
Thank you for that. I will say I just came across this in the last 5 years because my entire childhood was perfectionism. Be like my sister, you know, always comparison. And I lived the martyr heretic role in my family for as long as I can remember. So it took quite a few years for me to really unravel it. And human design was like, oh my Lord, this is why my life is the way it is. And it really started to piece together and make sense and really understand a lot of that conditioning. So it's amazing how far I've come along this journey. But if I didn't find human design, I probably would still be wallowing in like all of this drama that I had going on. But I can totally relate to that.
Awesome. Typing.
Here we go. So next question is coming up. How have you guys learned resiliency in overcoming the pessimism? And the pessimism comes from bumping into life. The pessimism is an internal thing. We already know it's a way to signpost for you, you know, to recognize it is a limited perspective. But how have you learned, and what have you guys done, and have you ever internalized the pessimism?
Have you ever seen the movie Rocky where he goes, you know, when life knocks you down, you get back up? That is every single third line personality person I've ever met in my life. We have a resiliency that's innate in us. It doesn't matter how big of a crap show we're in or how terribly wrong things went. Give it a couple of days and we're ready to just jump into the next thing. And I think we're
So
very
true.
I think we're very, very blessed with that. And it's, you know, that's part of the magic of being a 3. I mean, everybody looks at us and says, oh, look what they're going to do again. You know, the 6s and the 4s and, you know, looking. Yeah, well, we're the ones that get crap done. So, you know, and that's the fun part about us. It's just like that vibe. You cannot kill a third line.
I agree with you, and it's really kind of funny because you know, I had 2 really good role models in my life. My father had always taught me where there's a will, there's a way, which is what really ignited my gift of determination. That's my sun gate. Whether I didn't know it obviously as a child, but I was always bound to determine that, you know, there's got to be something better out there, or there's a way to resolve this. And my grandmother, she survived World War II. She, after World War II, came here to the United States, and why I'm blessed to live in this country. Because like she gave up everything, her family, and just moved here. She didn't know a lick of English. She didn't understand any of the ways, had to get a job, had to figure out how everything worked here in the US. And so to me, that was always my fallback when things got really bad. I would just be like, hey, my grandmother came here literally with nothing, not knowing a single soul, and she managed to navigate her way and create a better life for herself. She has an extraordinary like story all around some of the heartaches that she had to go through and things just to survive. So I'm like, I take a look at it and I'm like, my life isn't all that bad. So for me, that's really where I get a lot of my motivation, determination, is I'm reminded there's always a way of things. At the end of the day, if you try it, what's the worst that can really happen? I mean, you know, you fail, then you just find a different way to do it. Or I don't know. I mean, like, it's not most likely you're going to die. If reminds me a little bit of the story Green Eggs and Ham, right? You don't know what you're missing until you try it. You don't know what experience you're not going to have as a result. So I kind of just take it with a grain of salt in life.
Yeah, I think for me, I've actually kind of outgrown pessimism in a way. Like, I think when I was in my 20s more, I think I used pessimism as like a defense mechanism or as like a self-preservation tactic, like trying to anticipate something, maybe trying to expect the worst, as a way to like not be disappointed or something. And I've just sort of released that in my older years. I don't really find that there's like a usefulness in being pessimistic because it hasn't happened yet, and I won't know what's going to happen until I bump into it. So like full steam ahead, let's go into it, let's bump into life. I don't think that the point of life is to like go through it being completely unscathed. Like my personal philosophy is like, I want to have as many experiences as possible. I want to have like scars, by the end of it, because like that's just what I'm here for. It's for the richness. And so like learning resiliency, I guess it was just through having a lot of experiences and seeing that like the pessimism kind of was pointless, and that like actually the more experiences I have, the happier I am, the more interesting I feel, the more things I have to talk about. So yeah, I guess it was just through the experience that I learned to kind of release that and just embrace it.
It's funny that you say that, Cheyenne, because I feel like I am in my 20s working through releasing the pessimism, and I can like actually see it. It's like sometimes I'll see myself like fall back into like just putting a wall up and feeling like, what's the point when all there is ahead is like pain and this and that, like you can't avoid it. But then like I see the other side of me fighting against that, like, so what? You're gonna live the rest of your life pessimistic about everything and just not live? Like, wouldn't you rather like work through that, turn that pain into something powerful and continue having those experiences? So it's funny, as you were speaking, it's like I can literally see myself in that phase of life.
It's good. Good.
Let me tell you, I'm 54. I'm gonna be 55 soon. I said this in the chat, 3/5s, we age like wine. It's because of the experiences we pick up along the way. And then as we get older, it's like this natural thing that just occurs. People start looking to us because we're a fifth line body. They're projecting all over us. You've got the answers. You've got this. You've got that. It just comes out and it evolves that way. So that's the best part of being a 3 when we're young. We get into so much stuff. I wanted to use another word.
Mischief.
Yeah. I don't know if we're censored on here or not, so I wanted to be careful. I even named my not self. This is funny, and I wanted to add it. I grew up in Boston. My not self, I call him the townie when he comes out.
Oh my God, I love that. I need to name my not self.
Yeah.
I feel like I've named my like best version of myself, but I need to name my not self as well.
And if you put the two together, you will come up with a fabulous story. That's how I came up with the vital perfectionist.
Oh, I love
because
that.
Literally, I am dynamic, vitality. I've got these I took a look at my human design and all of my gifts, and I took a look at some of my shadows. And the biggest thing I struggled through life is perfectionism, right? Because that's what I grew up with. And I was like, what's a vital perfectionist? I was mind blown, literally mind blown of how well it describes my personality. And I was like, this is my personal brand story. Amen. Done.
Love that. I love that.
That's very cool.
This is amazing, guys. All good answers. I thought I heard you say 6 gate, Rogers. You had so you're the peacemaker.
I have 3 of those. I have a 666 hanging in my chart.
Is one of them in the 6th line? Because that's my line on my 6 gate.
No. I'm not. I'm mostly on the 2nd line and the 5th line, actually, in most of my chart.
You had said the peacemaker, and that's the name of the 6th line. I just made a. Anyhow, so guys, dude, I can't believe what you guys are sharing. This stuff is amazing. It's going to play well. And you know what? This episode is going to age like fine wine. Just like you said, it's going to age well. I'm sure of it.
How can it not?
So when you hear here's the thing. So this would be something that is going to be deep in you, so or not. When you hear bonds made and broken, that it can be tight relationships, friends, business, but very much intimacy, boyfriends, girlfriends type thing. Bonds made and broken. What are you really hearing? Like, what does that mean to you when you've seen this and you start to experience that? Yeah, this is a part of something, or just if you're hearing it for the first time, what does it mean to you? And that's
I have to go on this. I have so much to say about this.
Please.
This reminds me of every archived like friendship, relationship I've ever, and I have a lot. And it's not like, we have falling outs, but then, and sometimes they end on like bad notes. Not all of mine have ended on like a F you, kind of like an angry note. It's just like, we're complete. Like, we've outgrown each other. We've been kind of like aligning more and more with our true authenticity. We've been growing in separate directions. And we're just at a point where we have like nothing in common anymore. Like, literally, I had a best friend from second grade until I was 30, like 3 years old. Yeah, and then we parted ways, and I thought she was going to be a friend of mine for the rest of my life. I was like, what could possibly happen at 33 that like hasn't already happened? Well, more growing, more maturing, and we ended up parting ways.
Yeah.
And like, when I think back onto her, I still have so many fond memories, but I'm like, I just have absolutely nothing to say to her anymore. And it's like, and then I think someone else mentioned earlier, like, with breakups, I have absolutely no problem just being like, oh, you like passed, a boundary, you didn't respect, one of my red flags or whatever it is. And it's like, we're done. You're blocked on everything. I will never speak to you again. You are dead to me. Like, it is so clean. And so, yeah, when I heard that, I was like, oh, again, more things that are coming up in human design that I was like, I didn't know that was a 3-5 thing, but I'm like,
there's a positive reflection to that too. And I wonder if you ladies relate to this. I have friends that I haven't talked to in 7-8 years, but I could pick up the phone and be on terms with them like that. And a lot of the people that are very close to me in my life, I have that cyclical relationship with them that somehow bonds made, bonds broken. But then the real ones, we tend to go back to them, is my personal experience as I've gone through this trip as a 3-5.
Actually, as you mentioned that, I'm recognizing that like that very much is prevalent in my life. Of there are people that I thought were in the past, and it was a fond relationship. It helped me develop in the ways it does, but I thought it was meant to live there. And literally the cycle that I'm in now, I'm recognizing a lot of the people from the past are coming back, and like it's a completely new reason they're here. It's a completely new dynamic. It's a completely new lesson.
And that opens you up. It's like, oh my gosh. And I have this, some people would think I was manic with some of this stuff. I played guitar for decades, but I like to play for like 3 months, and then I'll put that thing down and I won't touch it for 6 months. And then all of a sudden one day I'll pick it back up, whether it's an art brush or an activity or a hobby. We make and break bonds with everything as 3-5s in my personal experience. And but the biggest thing for me is in relationships, I need to break the bond. I can't do 24/7, 365 with the hi honey, I miss you. It's like, no, I need time to break the bond as a 3-5. It's like it crushes me. I don't know if you guys relate to that.
Yeah, like almost like a suffocation. Like I need the space, and it's exactly that. It's like I need to break it, or like it's like the idea of the consistency makes me go crazy. Like I don't want the consistency. I want it to be up and down. Like maybe we're not going to see each other or speak to each other for a minute, and then maybe we will later. Like I like not knowing. The idea of the safety of a committed relationship.
Separation builds attraction to me. You know what I mean? So you gotta have time apart to build the attraction, or else it's like the sameness. It's like having the same sandwich every day.
It's like it becomes it's less of a relationship and becomes more of just like going through the motions, and that's what I'm scared of. Like I'd rather stay in the in the phase where there's something to work on, because I don't want to get complacent. And once I feel the complacency, I just want to break the bond. Like, I don't want to be there anymore.
I can see that. And I've definitely had those, outgrew people. I think that happens with all of us in the work. It's a natural outcome. Nothing like relationships. I've always said relationships are like rocket fuel for personal growth work. I mean, especially ending relationships. I mean, woof, had a few of those. So, bonds made and broken.
Guys, you covered it. Absolutely. And by now you've also recognized that made and broken. I mean, you all spoke to that and so forth. And I would submit that in our 9-centered communal forms that they're all meant to be made and broken, but almost it's pretty rare that they're meant to be broken fully, like Fine, we are done. Sometimes, yes, but when I tell a third line that, it's often they get to soften up that break. It seems like in the beginning when you're not sure, the breaking is like, this is broken, final. And it didn't need to be, it needed to be just broken. And so there's a toning down of the intensity of it all when we don't know, So next question up. How have you, all of these are how have you experienced? I'm so glad you guys are just talking. How have you experienced this universalizing these practical heresies by challenging what does not work? So just universalizing, just how have you experienced the fact that you're put out the thing that becomes potentially heretical? And I can only imagine you guys see that, hey, I'm about to challenge something here. I mean, you're the determined discoverer. You're the challenger, just like Roger's saying, it's a beautiful, exalted place. But how have you experienced the fact when you're bringing something new, what we would call practical heresies, by challenging what does not work? Because that's what you end up doing, is some kind of challenge to whatever the foundation is over there. So how have you experienced all that?
I have to say, I think through all of my experiences, I am busting loose the whole limiting belief that you cannot create money and run a business doing what you love. For me, that has been one of the biggest things, because I've had such a love for art, for photography, for graphics design, for all of these things. But I've always been told, well, there's no money in art. There's no money in graphics design. And a lot of people that I talk to, if you ask them when they're looking for their purpose, you say, well, what is it that you really love to do? They will go on and tell you all these things that are their hobbies that they absolutely love to do. And there always is the caveat, but there's no money to be made doing that, or I can't make a living off of that. So that's just a hobby. And part of my mission, building a personal brand, is really to take that human design and figure out how we can take those strengths and take those core elements of who you are and create that business that you like, create that idea of what you love, and learn how to make some money doing it. So I feel like for me, I'm kind of challenging that, and especially I'm seeing that a lot in the marketplace, is where personal branding is like the hot topic, if you will, the next best thing. And you're seeing a lot of these corporate brands that are really trying to be more personalized, and you see individual businesses and people trying to be more, do the thing that brands are doing, right? Because they say, oh, well, this big corporation, did X, and so I need to do that, right? To be viral, to be on trend, to catch up with what this brand is doing. But it's actually the exact opposite. And the big difference between a corporate brand and a personal brand is really that relatableness, because when people understand and know, like, and trust you, then that's when they're likely to buy from you. And that's what personal branding is really all about. And I love the idea of taking a look at people's human design and looking at some of their purpose, and really dovetailing the two together, because we all have a unique way to ask for things, to sell people on stuff, and to express who we are. And that's what attracts people to us, that allows us to make money doing what we love. So,
Shayan, I think you're muted.
Thank you. I muted because I didn't want there to be background noise. But Maria, I love what you just like kind of spoke to, how you kind of said the thing that is kind of that calls you into highlighting about like what does not work. Like for you, it's about like making people feel comfortable about, actually going after what they love to do and then finding like financial fulfillment in that. For me, I think the thing that does not work that is on my heart as like a 3-5 to universalize is how there's this kind of like we have a very narrow sort of margin for what is considered like normal, and then so many people fall outside of that, like being otherized, just being told like you're not normal. Even us as like
Right.
or whatever, it's like if you're not a generator, then it's like you're it's like everyone has been otherized. And so I think for me, in my experience, it's like as just kind of inherently, it's not necessarily a conscious thing that I've been like, this is my mission, but in the spaces that I go in, the way that I just accept people and just like kind of normalize like the other, or it can either really, really trigger people and they have a really strong reaction to it where they're like, what are you talking about? That's weird. That's not normal. And I'm like, no, like I'm not subscribing to that. Or I notice some people, because I come in so flat, like they might express something about themselves that like usually might be criticized or seen as other, but I just accept it so much that they're just like, oh my God, like that was so comfortable. And then it like just, it enables this spirit of like more and more just vulnerability, people opening up and just being very like accepting of themselves. And I've been told
Exactly.
where they're like, you are so accepting of yourself and all your quirks and idiosyncrasies that then I feel very comfortable, divulging those things to you too. And so I've noticed those two extremes where on the one hand, people are like, absolutely not. And on the other hand, people are like, oh yeah. And they're really into it. So.
Yeah.
Video stays on for a minute. I'm sorry. I want to talk for a second.
You got it.
The fifth line is an interesting thing, and there were two keywords that were in the question. It was universalizing and practical. And that's the thing we have to remember as 3-5s, and this is where we can get burned at the stake. If whatever we're universalizing, saying, sharing with the collective or with the tribe is not practical, meaning easily digestible and understandable or usable by whoever's receiving it, we're going to get burned at the stake for it. If it's complicated, if it's not worked out, or if it doesn't work. So there's a mechanic at play with projections. And sometimes I think, when we're 3-5s, we can struggle seeing how people are putting expectations on us to deliver things. So, it really pays to be very practical with awareness on practicality. Above all else, all things need to be practical. So when I hear those two words together, that's what I remember about universalizing things. Always, always be practical and think of your audience and how it's going to land on them, whatever it may be. So
the KISS method. Keep it simple.
Yeah. I mean, I was VP. I got all those in my back pocket for sure. What's the other one? Poor performance, the 6 Ps or something like that. Yeah, I remember all those ones. But Taz, please go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you, love.
No,
I'm sorry.
You're fine. But I just wanted to piggyback off of what everyone was saying, and like I feel like what I feel driven and passionate about challenging with the personal brand that I am building, Murray, is kind of challenging this idea of group thinking. I feel like I just recognize that a lot of people just decided that like it should be whatever it is, it should be a certain way because you're told it should be a certain way. And so a lot of the content that I put out, the articles that I write, basically just challenges like typical schools of thought. The whole point was like me telling my story and saying your story doesn't need to look the same. And I feel like one thing that I've felt with influencer culture and personal branding is like a lot of the content is still somebody sitting there telling you, if you want X, then do Y. And I'm trying to challenge that whole formula. Like, I don't know what your Y is. Like, if you want X, look within. And here's just what I've been doing to look within, and maybe something will inspire you. Here's some books, here's some knowledge, here's some experiences that can help you on your journey. But I think
Right.
my whole thing is just challenging this idea of someone else is going to give you the answer. You need to figure out the answer. So yeah.
Shiny object syndrome. Yes. I think as a 3-5, I fell, victim to that 1,000,001 times of just always seeking knowledge and answers, until that was another aha moment for me. Is I literally, through just a deep meditation, and that's where my tagline came in: create the experience, because I am not a researcher. Most of us in school are taught, reading and writing, arithmetic, basic things, but we're all taught as a researcher, right? You have to back up your claims, and prove everything and do all of this.
They tried to make us into bloodlines, is what they did.
Well, right, but I'm not a one line. I'm not a researcher. Not to say that that isn't important. I research enough to go, oh, yeah, I've got enough information to try out and figure what this means, right? And go with it. But I am not I've got to know all the bells and whistles. To me, it's like driving a car, right? You have to kind of know the mechanics, where the wipers are to turn signals, the basics, but you do not necessarily have to know all of how the engine works and all the different hoses and plugs and things that are all connected in order to drive the car.
That's the beauty of human